So my experience with a canvas tent has been a good one, both in the wintertime and in the summer. I've been staying in canvas tents, sometimes just for a weekend, sometimes for up to like a week or two at a time, just depending on my work schedule and everything. So the original one that I stayed in was the 10x12 wall tent in the background there. So I think that one had a lot more disadvantages than advantages, but I'm really happy with the bell tent design. It's just tends to shed water more, and the wind tends to not affect it quite as much either. Now, depending on the area that you live in, how windy it is, how much rain you get, snow and things like that, that depends on how much maintenance you got to do. But generally, every once in a while, you want to tighten these up. It's just kind of turn that, tighten them. So pretty self-explanatory. These tend to come loose, I've noticed, depending on how much wind we've been getting. But usually every couple of weeks I have to tighten them up. Not too much upkeep. This one has the opening for the pipe coming out of the side. The 10x12 tent, it had it coming from the ceiling. So kind of personal preference. You can keep the pipe straighter, obviously coming up through the ceiling. When it's from the side, you have to have that little elbow. But I like this one better because it doesn't get the rainwater in the tent like the other one did. So had to make some modifications. Had to cut the hole bigger because I'm using 6-inch pipe instead of the 5-inch pipe that the hole was cut for. Plus the edges got pretty hot and singed some, so I had to cut that away. Bit of a gap, potential for insects and stuff to get in there, but I really haven't had too much trouble. A little bit have been getting in there, but I've been using fly paper. And then you just brace it with a T-post. No issues there. As far as the height, it's not quite as high as the roof of the tent. However, I have it facing the east because with the wind 9 times out of 10 coming from the west, even with it not being above there, I just 9 times out of 10 the wind blows the smoke away from me. So another thing you want to keep in mind with your stovepipe and stuff in your tent is that you obviously don't want it really short here, because then sparks and stuff, you don't want that hitting your tent. But also too, I did have this pretty high up, and what was happening was some of them really cold nights, the smoke would be coming out and then it would be traveling up. By the time it get towards the top, it was so cold that it would just turn in all this creosote, and I ended up having to clean it quite often. So I figured, you know, this one, it's a decent length up above to where I haven't had any smoke in the tent, so that's good. And one of the things you want to check too is I like putting a cap on it. Some people put the spark arresters. I didn't have any trouble, but it depends on your area. But you got to watch. I couldn't figure out. I'd just clean the chimney, and I wasn't getting any draft. I was like, the week prior, because I work away during the week, I'm like, man, why ain't this getting any draft? And a bird ended up building a nest up in there. So I was like, man. So I took it off, went to clean it. I'm like, well, that's the problem right there. There's no, bird's nest is blocking it. So yeah, clean that out and worked like a charm. Inside here, there's pretty much enough room to stand up in just about the majority of the tent, other than when you get right up to the edge here. Okay, so, but other than that, the majority of it, you got tall ceilings there, so makes it nice. You don't get claustrophobic, and it feels, I don't know, feels pretty spacious in here. You got a number of options for heat, like I was discussing earlier. As far as the chimney, I got the barrel stove here. The kits are cheap, barrels are cheap, stovepipe's not too much, so really you only have a couple $100 at most into one of these. Now obviously, if you plan on packing any of this stuff in, barrel stove's probably not going to be an option. But if you plan on setting this up for a few weeks or a few months at a time, I would go with the barrel stove. I mean, they're, they last a long time. I always thought how, like, burn barrels outside, how they don't last more than a few months depending on how much rain you get and all that. I thought that these wouldn't last, but they do. So I've stayed in this through some pretty cold nights, and I'd say far as probably about the only time I've ever gotten cold with this is whenever I just would come in and the stove had only, like, if I lit a fire and within the first hour or so, just while, you know, we're getting the bed of coals and everything like that up, that's probably about the only time I got cold. Maybe sometimes late, like in the morning, when the fire's burnt down quite a bit and you just got a few glowing embers and things like that. Now that's about the only time I got cold in this tent. So, I know folks a lot of times tend to get those small stoves for in these kind of tents. You know, I guess if, you know, you're traveling, backpacking, hauling in with your truck or whatever, you know, like I was saying earlier, it'd be kind of hard to haul in a barrel stove. But the thing with this is you can put almost a wheelbarrow load of firewood in and you turn it on low. Nothing will burn through the night and keep you warm, depending on where your bed is. I got my bed right there, so that's far enough away to where I don't got to worry about any sort of fire hazard, and then it's not going to cook me out or nothing either. And it's close enough to where I can feel the heat from the fire, so that's nice, having that. The tent actually does a pretty good job of holding in the heat. You do have a couple vents up here, so you do get some heat loss, but it provides for ventilation. And then if the place gets smoky, whenever you're putting wood in the fire, I mean, it just, you know, that helps get the smoke out there. But it does. I was very surprised. I mean, you can see it's very thin fabric, but it definitely holds it in a lot better than I thought. And then you want to have, of course, your ash bucket there and then a fire extinguisher. You got enough room to keep a little supply of firewood there to get you through the night. And then another option as well is some sort of little propane heat, something like that, depending on if it's spring or fall. You just want to take the chill off. So that's nice to where you don't have to light a big fire in there and then, you know, cook you out and stuff. So, but another advantage of having a stove in here is that you can cook on top of it. You can have a container to have water constantly heating and stuff. And because of the curvature of the barrel, my dad's buddy made a thing here that'll fit over top of the stove. That way you don't got to worry about knocking over the pot and stuff like that. There's enough room for a bed. I got a little bunk bed here. You could probably get a full-sized bed in here depending on how much furniture and stuff you're wanting to bring in, but no issues whatsoever with this. Got room for a rocking chair, some storage boxes, things. Got table, chair. Build a little shelf here. Depending on how often you do plan on using this, you are going to want some things for storage, whether it's plastic totes or shelves, or how rustic of a look you're wanting to go with, or just out of necessity and ease and things like that. It's all your preference. As far as water, I ended up getting, this was my great-grandmother's old galvanized wash tub here. So, ran a little hose underneath it. And then I got my water up here when I want to wash my hands, wash my face. Use it to get a drink. Just turn it on. There you go. Fresh water. I just have the hose to the sink. It's running outside the tent here. And it just drains right there. In the wintertime, it's awesome that the tent holds in the heat. But in the summertime, not so much. So that's one of the few disadvantages. However, some of the designs that you can get, they have windows there with screens that you can unzip. So this particular one has a number of different windows in it. You can choose whether to unzip or not. And then it also has, along the bottom here, this particular design, you can actually unzip the entire outside wall. And then just roll it up and tuck it there. I've never unzipped the entire wall portion yet, just because of mosquitoes and things like that. I usually just have the door open and a few windows. So, I probably could, but usually just coming in here at night, by the time it gets pretty hot in here, I'm usually not spending too much time. Like right now, it's middle of July, and it's in the 90s outside. I mean, I got my tent up in the woods in the shade, and I mean, I'm still sweating, so this, yeah, I mean, this is generally something to where I'm not going to spend the day in. You know, you're going to be out you know, whether you're hiking or swimming or doing whatever with it, and you know, in the summertime. I mean, I just use it to stay on the weekends. But I got some flypaper up a couple places. Sometimes the bugs do get in. I was surprised. I figured just having that gap here for the stovepipe, I figured this place would be full of bugs and mosquitoes and stuff, but it hasn't been too bad. So a few flies. Other than that, yeah, it's not too bad. As far as lighting in here, with this being light colored material, it does a pretty good job of staying bright in here. Number of options you can do for light. This particular option, you can hang like a little light, or I did have a kerosene lamp in here for a while and I ended up just going with battery. So that's however rustic or traditional you want to go. I have a bit of a mix match here. I mean, an old bed and an old chair, and you know, you got the galvanized tub and stuff and old wooden shelves, and then I got a bunch of battery powered lights, so it's kind of a mismatch of technology and so forth. But yeah, whatever you want to do and whatever works, I mean, go for it. The floor, I'm not much of a housekeeper, so don't judge my my dirty floor. Plus I got my fat dog, always walks in and out. That's his bed. So I'm very much pleased with its design here, because this floor came with it. I've had zero issues with it. Absolutely none. The other design that I bought, you had to buy the floor separate, and it was expensive. You might want a dirt floor. I don't know. If you're going to be in here in the wintertime, I'd recommend getting some sort of tarp of just, I don't know, something to protecting you from the ground. Summer, it doesn't matter too much, other than when you're climbing into bed or your sleeping bag. I don't know. You want to wear flip-flops or have a little mat or something like that before you're crawling in, so you don't have dirty feet. But as far as in front of the stove, I had some drywall left over from a project, and I put it down for the stove, but the ground was uneven, so it busted up and things. But having a wood stove, you are going to want something in front of that. That way the sparks and the hot coals and stuff don't come out and melt. Because there was one spot here, I did have a hot coal came out right there, burnt hole. But I mean, that's, you know, that's no fault of the tent. I mean, that was, you know, came out. Now, disadvantage of that, as you can see, is as you walk across it, it does crack and crumble, and you know, you're going to want to replace it. So there's a number of options. I could get metal or whatever. I mean, it just, you know, if this was flat, it probably wouldn't bust like what it's doing, but you know, it is what it is. I didn't set this up properly. You can see it's kind of twisted, so not really sure what I've done wrong. You want to kind of line the rope up with the little seam, try to do all that, but you know, that's I don't know what I did wrong there. But other than that, the design of the tent, I mean, just when the wind gets to blowing pretty hard, it generally doesn't shake the tent too bad. My old tent over there, I mean, any little wind and stuff, it would usually get to flapping around and stuff like that. But this one, sometimes when we would get 30-mile-an-hour winds and higher than that, then, you know, the thing would get to flapping and wake you up and stuff. But yeah, it had to be pretty strong winds to really have any effect on it. Yeah, that's pretty much been my my 2-year experience with the canvas tents. So I had been planning on buying like an RV, little pull behind RV camper type thing, because I work away during the week and I don't have a house built yet. I'm trying to build it in here at some point. Didn't have a house, and just figured, well, I'd like something to stay in, and whenever I come up here, because I want, you know, want to come to the property on the weekends. So I was looking at RVs and stuff, and it's like, well, can I put a wood stove in one? I was asking them, like, well, there's not really any room to put. I mean, I guess I could put like a little tiny one the size of a coffee can in there or something, but you know, realistically, you're gonna have to burn propane and stuff. And I'm like, all right, I don't really want to do all that. And I never had any experience with the canvas tents other than like the green military ones, staying in them. And I was like, well, I forget what I was doing, but I just came across the idea of like, you know, canvas tent, and I was looking into that. It's like, well, they're a lot cheaper than RVs and a lot easier to fix and a lot easier to transport. You can just throw it in a car. You don't have to have a truck to haul it or nothing. And yeah, I like them. I really like them, you know. Now you don't have the shower, you don't have some of those commodities that what a camper does, but like with the galvanized tub there, you know, you can make do, you can sort of rig stuff up. Just use your imagination. There's all sorts of stuff that camping stores and things sell that you can get that you just kind of transfer into this, or build something yourself, or, you know, just get a gym membership and you know, go shower at the gym, do whatever, you know, just kind of make do. But yeah, I like it. I mean, this definitely was a good investment. Now these tents, they're not designed to be outside 24/7 for months at a time, sometimes longer, like what I've been doing with them. So I have to take that into consideration, that there is going to be some wear and tear on them that you normally wouldn't have. So you can see that there's like some moss growing on it. No holes though. I'm very pleased with that because I'm under some trees. We got some pretty bad windstorms. My bed's right here and some branches flew, and I mean it woke me up a few times. Some branches hit. I mean, I'm surprised it didn't tear a hole through, but it didn't. So like I said, you just come through every now and then and tighten these up. But it's eventually going to rot. The sun hitting it and just, you know, constantly being out in the weather. So hopefully I get the house built before that. But you know, it's definitely well worth the money, that's for sure. And it beats, I don't know, I've stayed in campers a couple times and it definitely, I don't know, I enjoy it more than that. It kind of has like a cabiny feel to it, I guess, more than what an RV does. So I've had this tent for almost 2 years. It's been out in the elements for, yeah, just about 2 years now. So obviously it's got more wear and tear on it. And this one does not have any sort of waterproofing material on it like the other one does. This one's just straight up canvas. So that's why there was the tarp up there, which I'm gonna have to tighten that down a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely got some moss growing on it. I like how these look, kind of the old West style tent look to them. But I don't know, this one leaked and it was a lot more expensive than the other one, and the aluminum framing cracked the day I set it up, and you had to buy everything separate. So I have a few videos on my page back whenever I was staying in this, if you're curious what the experience was like in this. You can go check those out. But yeah, with it being 2 years old, you can see that there's moss growing on it. So it's been outside almost 2 years, and this one wasn't waterproof like the other one is. So that's why there's the tarp. And this one had, you can see the flap where the pipe went up through the roof. So if you like that better, go for it. I didn't like it because of, well, you know, like I said, the rain coming through. So I'm just using it now just to store things in. So it's done a pretty good job for that. But out of the two designs, I do like this one better. Especially the fact that this one's never leaked on me.